As the sun was setting in Arizona, the sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. Jack Reynolds, a former soldier, was walking slowly to the town's animal shelter. The sound of boots with each step was like an echo of the emptiness he experienced after the war. Therapies, work, everyday life. But that old voice, that breath, Rex. She never forgot him. As she passed between the cages in the shelter, no glances moved her. Until, "We've got a German shepherd in the back. He's a bit different," said one of the staff. Jack froze. He moved silently towards the corner cage. A familiar shadow lay before him. That posture, that look, but hollow. "Rex," he whispered. The dog looked up but didn't recognize him. The tail didn't wag. His eyes were glazed. Jack shivered inside, but he didn't look away. "It's not that he doesn't remember you," his inner voice said. "It means she has to forget you." And in that moment, he decided, this bond will be restored no matter how long it takes. Jack opened the door of the van slowly and gestured to the side seat. Rex didn't move at first, his body tense, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings intently. There was no sound in the yard except a few leaves swaying in the wind and the distant barking of a dog. "Come on, buddy," Jack said softly, patting him on the knee. Rex hesitated for a few more seconds, then climbed down with heavy steps. His movements were careful, almost soldierly, cautious. The house was modest but warm, with a small porch, a wooden gate, and a front yard surrounded by old hedges. Jack let him in, taking his time, not frightening him. "You're home now," he whispered. Rex stood in the hallway, sniffing the air, his eyes darting to every corner, his ears fully retracted. Jack had set up a new bed for him in the corner of the living room, a stainless steel bowl and some toys. "Look, this is your space," he said, gesturing. But Rex didn't move. He just stood there as if waiting for an order. Jack watched him for a while, then went into the kitchen and started to make himself something. He opened the can of beans, put them in the pan, then turned around and looked again. Rex was still in the same place, still, watchful, distant. "I know that feeling," Jack said in a low voice. He leaned against the counter, rubbing the root of his neck. "I think we both forgot to trust." That night, Jack left the bedroom door open a crack, hoping Rex would feel safe and come closer. He lay staring at the ceiling, the sound of the fan above mingling with the silence of the night. But then he heard it. Soft, determined pause. Jack didn't look up. Rex didn't enter the room. He lay on the floor just outside the door, on the threshold, as if guarding the door but not ready to go in. Jack smiled faintly in the dark. "That was enough for now," he whispered, and indeed it was. The next morning when Jack got up, Rex was already awake. He was sitting quietly by the living room window. His ears heard Jack's footsteps, but he didn't move. He just stared out at the misty garden outside. "Good morning, Rex," Jack said quietly, yawning as he walked past. There was no answer. Determined to bond, Jack tried again and again throughout that morning. He brought his breakfast, but Rex only approached his food after Jack left the room. Jack brought a tennis ball, rolled it on the floor, but Rex didn't even turn his head. Jack sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, watching. "It's okay. I won't give up on you." That afternoon, Jack took an old wooden box out of the closet. He took out the duty vest he'd kept for years and went out into the garden. He laid it on the ground close to Rex. The dog looked at it, lifted his nose, and sniffed the air. Jack held his breath. Rex approached slowly, sniffed the fabric, and backed away. His tail was low, his ears back again. Jack knelt down, sat down next to the vest. He's not ready, but he will be. That night, Jack left the door open again. And again, Rex lay on the doorstep, a little closer this time. Jack said nothing. He didn't need to. Because in that silence, something was being built. Not just a memory, but trust. Jack was more determined than ever that morning. He decided to try something new to gain Rex's trust. He slowly made his way to the closet and pulled out the old military vest he had worn on the mission. The vest he had worn years ago, the one Rex would recognize the smell of, still smelled of dust. He slowly walked out into the yard, dropped the vest a few feet from Rex without distracting him. Then he stepped back and waited for a moment. Rex turned his head slightly. He looked at the vest on the ground, then back at Jack. His ears perked up. He lifted his nose and sniffed. There was something familiar in the air. Jack held his breath. Rex slowly stood up and walked towards the vest, taking careful steps, hesitating. When he got close to it, he stopped, then bent down and sniffed. Jack watched, unblinking. For a few seconds, Rex's gaze shifted. It was as if he was remembering something, as if there was the scent of a past life in that fabric. But then, he pulled back. He lowered his tail and walked away. Jack bowed his head and sighed deeply. For the rest of that day, Rex watched Jack from a distance, always out of the corner of his eye as he chopped wood, watered the garden, sat at the gate, but never closer. But Jack knew it. It was a step, a distant but curious step. In the evening, Jack was in the kitchen preparing dinner. This time, Rex was lying on the carpet on the edge of the kitchen. He had his head down, but his eyes were watching Jack. It was the closest they had been in days. Jack prepared a plate and put it on the floor, but he didn't wait beside him. After a few minutes, Rex went to the food and for the first time ate in front of him. Jack's eyes filled, but he didn't show it. He sat quietly in the corner of the kitchen and watched him. Then he smiled slightly. "I think we're becoming friends again, huh?" he said. Rex didn't answer, but his eyes were less empty than they had been a few days before. That moment was enough for Jack. There was more to do, but now there was a place where it could all begin. As he lay in bed for the night, Jack checked Rex's position before turning out the lamp. This time, Rex was lying a few feet away from the bed, not in his old spot in the hallway. He was close, closer than he'd ever been before. Jack pulled the blanket over him, watching the ceiling, and whispered, "That's it. Here we go." The next morning, Jack was up early as usual. As he made his coffee in the kitchen, he checked on Rex out of the corner of his eye. The dog was lying on the rug in the corner of the living room, but his head was raised, watching Jack. The look was uncharacteristic, less defensive, more curious. Maybe something was being remembered. Jack wanted to take advantage of this quiet progress. He took an old rubber ball out of a box, the dusty but still intact toy he and Rex had played with years ago between every mission. He walked out into the yard, spinning the ball in his hand. "Let's see, do you remember?" he said quietly. He threw the ball down. It landed a few feet in front of Rex. The dog looked up, his eyes focused on the ball, but it didn't move. Jack continued to watch. Rex approached the ball, cocked his head, sniffed it. For a moment, it was as if he froze. His eyes were pensive, but then he pulled back slightly and returned to his seat. Jack hid his disappointment. He knew he should have given him time, but that day was full of little moments. That afternoon, as they were chopping wood, Jack paused for a moment to wipe his hand. And Rex was watching him from a few feet away. His ears pricked up, his head tilted slightly to the side. That look was familiar, like a piece of the old days was still inside him. That night, Jack found Rex's old ID tag. It still had his name, unit code, and duty number on it. He cleaned it and put it on his new collar. Then he opened the door. He said, "Let's go for a walk." Rex hesitated, stood in the doorway. He stared at the horizon as if the world was still full of threat. Jack took a step, tugged lightly on the leash, and the dog walked slowly after him. For the first few minutes, Rex's whole body was tense, his head low, his nose always in the air, looking for danger. Jack recognized it. The reflexes that had protected him for years. Slowly he began to speak. "No more war, buddy," he said quietly. "You can hear it in my voice. We're here. We're calm." He didn't know how far those words reached Rex, but the softness in his tone soon lightened the dog's step. When they got home, Jack took off his leash. Rex unexpectedly sniffed Jack's hand. It was a very brief, very small contact, but Jack's heart skipped a beat. "That's it," he said in a whisper. A remembrance. That evening, as Jack prepared dinner, Rex lay on the carpet, but this time his eyes were closed. For the first time in a long time, he seemed to relax. Jack watched him. He said nothing. He was just there. In that moment, in the silence, something changed. The sky had turned gray as night slowly fell. Jack was sitting on the porch, holding his coffee mug in his hands. The air was cool, but mostly he was listening to the silence. A storm was approaching. Distant thunder echoed in the sky. Rex was standing in the garden at the end of the porch, watching the sky. His head was slightly raised, his nose quivering in the wind. It was as if he had returned to a scene from years ago. Jack approached quietly. "You always liked storms, didn't you?" he murmured, almost to himself. Rex turned his head slowly. His gaze met Jack's for a brief moment, and there was something in that look, not exactly trust, but familiarity. Jack took a deep breath, then slowly went inside and opened the box of old military equipment. He pulled out the small metal whistle he used on missions. He twirled it in his hand, then returned to the porch. He blew 2 short whistles, just like he had done all those years ago when he'd called in the operation. Rex was startled. His ears pricked up. His eyes turned to Jack. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then Rex took a step. Jack's heart quickened, but then Rex stopped, his head bowed, his ears lowered. It was like a war was raging inside him. Jack slowly put the whistle back in his pocket. "It's okay, buddy," Jack said softly. "We'll go at your pace." As the night wore on, the storm intensified, rain pelting the windows, lightning lighting up the sky. Jack spread a blanket on the living room floor, left a water jug for Rex. But this time he did something different. He leaned his back against the wall and sat quietly in the corner where Rex was. He didn't approach. He didn't speak. He was just there. He wanted to show by his presence that he wasn't alone. After a long silence, Rex got up from his seat. He walked slowly towards Jack. A few steps, then stopped. Jack held his breath. The dog moved forward, stopped in front of Jack, and bent his head down to sniff his hand. The touch was brief, but it was enough. Jack's heart was beating fast, but he didn't move. Only a slight smile appeared on his face. "You're coming, mate," he said in a whisper. Rex backed away again, and a few moments later he lay down on the floor next to Jack. The distance between them was almost nothing this time. It was a victory for Jack. A small but giant step. That night, when Jack went to bed, he looked at the door before he turned out the light. Rex was there, his head resting on the edge of the bed, his eyes half closed. Jack didn't say anything. He just reached out and stroked Rex's head for the first time. And Rex didn't move. He just closed his eyes, and they fell asleep together. Jack woke up as the morning sun slowly filtered into the room. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was Rex, curled up asleep on the edge of the bed. The dog's breathing was calm, his body relaxed. Jack put his head back on the pillow with a warm smile. This morning was different. After breakfast, Jack reached up to the top shelf of the cupboard and pulled down a dusty box that hadn't been opened for years. Inside were documents, letters, medals from his military service. It was taken years ago, a soldier and a dog back-to-back post-mission in the mud but with smiling eyes. Jack and Rex. Jack put the photo gently on the floor next to Rex. "Look, buddy," he said, "you saved my life the first time I saw you here like this." Rex looked up. He looked at the photo, then at Jack. He stood still for a few seconds. Then he slowly sniffed the photo, bowed his head, and lay down beside him. Jack's heart ached, but this time not with bitterness, but with gratitude. They spent the day together. They went out into the garden. Jack threw the ball again. This time Rex didn't just look at it, he ran after it. He picked it up, brought it back, dropped it at Jack's feet. Jack bent down and picked it up. He couldn't stop his eyes from welling up. "That's it," he said in a whisper. "You know me. You remember me all right now." In the evening, Jack was sitting on the sofa in the living room. Rex had his head in Jack's lap. The TV was on, but there was no sound. Jack's eyes drifted away as he stroked Rex's ears with his fingers. It was as if he was thinking about the past and the future at the same time. Then he gently placed his hand on the photograph. The only words he said in that moment were, "You're not just a dog. You're the unfinished part of me." Rex closed his eyes slowly. Jack leaned his head back and they fell asleep together. This was no longer the beginning of a healing, but of a completion. That morning it was clear. The sun was slowly filtering into the garden. The birds were singing quietly. Jack went out on the porch, coffee mug in hand, his eyes searching for Rex. The dog was walking around the yard, his head held high, his stride more relaxed than before. Every morning now began with a little hope. Today Jack had something different planned. He went to the garage and pulled something out of the old military memorabilia box, Rex's old false collar. It had a rusted name tag on it, Rex K9 Unit. Jack cleaned it, put it back on carefully. Then he put the collar on and opened the door. "Come on, buddy," he said. "We're going to an old place today." In the car, Rex was looking out the window. His face was still wary, but there was no panic in his eyes. All the way there, Jack watched him in the rearview mirror. When they got to the park, Jack got out of the car, then opened the back door. Rex hesitated at first, but then got out. He breathed in the smells, the birdsong, the light breeze. It was as if something was familiar. Jack picked up the ball. "Do you remember?" he said, smiling slightly. He threw the ball. Rex turned his head, looked at it. Then suddenly he ran. He caught it, turned, and walked towards Jack. He dropped it at his feet. Jack's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't cry. "Dear friend," he said quietly, "this is it. This is you." The two stayed in the park for hours, sometimes playing, sometimes just sitting. When Jack sat on a bench, Rex put his head on his leg. Rex sat next to Jack this time, his head resting lightly on Jack's shoulder as he looked out the car window. Jack said a prayer. "You came back, but I know. I came back to you." It was dusk. Jack was sitting quietly on the porch, a cup of tea in his hand, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Rex was curled up on the floor beside him, resting his head on Jack's leg, breathing deeply. Jack stroked Rex's head with his hand and whispered just one sentence. "You weren't my salvation. You were everything I needed to remember." And then, just silence.